Along the waterways and amongst the fields, forests, and hills of the Northeast is where the American Revolution was fought and won. 250 years ago, this ancient land of natural majesty and grandeur was a battleground for nations and empires. Men, women, and children from across the world struggled to survive against enemies, human and natural, to win a war that would forever shape the future of North America and the world, here in the Northern Department. Today, the historic sites and museums of the Northern Department bring to life the experience of the American Revolution and the events that have forever shaped our world. Across 3 nations and as many states and provinces, the region's history is among the richest in North America. The area around the Lake Champlain Valley had been at the heart of the conflicts between European empires and Native American nations for generations, culminating in some of the largest and most significant campaigns of the French and Indian War in the 1750s. 15 years later, the struggle between Britain and her colonies plunged the region back into war and into the spotlight of history. The British fort at Ticonderoga was captured by Americans in the early morning hours of May 10, 1775, less than a month after the beginning of the Revolutionary War. This, the first American victory of the Revolution, not only boosted morale, it shifted the course of the war, and once again ensured the area along Lake Champlain and its tributaries was at the heart of a new theater of war. Today, Fort Ticonderoga preserves one of the most historically significant landscapes on the continent. Restored in the 20th century, Fort Ticonderoga brings to life the dramatic events of the Revolution on a daily basis, alongside extensive museum exhibits featuring rare survivors from the Revolutionary War and beyond, all situated on the breathtaking Ticonderoga Peninsula, where history and natural beauty collide, a memorable beginning to exploring the Northern Department. As American forces consolidated their control of Ticonderoga and Crown Point, the Continental Congress officially created an army, taking control of the expanding American war effort across the colonies. In June of 1775, they created an administrative division centered on the newly opened Northern Theater in New York. This became known as the Northern Department of the Continental Army. For the next 3 years, the Northern Department supported ambitious invasions, desperate defenses, and ultimately achieved an incontrovertible victory over the British by 1777. In those tense 3 years, the Northern Department experienced some of the most active and consequential campaigning of the entire American Revolution. In the late summer of 1775, the Continental Congress authorized an invasion of Canada, dramatically escalating the Revolutionary War. Launched from Ticonderoga and Crown Point, Continental soldiers poured northward in hopes of adding a 14th colony to their rebellion. Today, the fort at Crown Point remains largely as it may have appeared at the start of the American Revolution. In early 1773, a chimney fire quickly spread out of control, causing the powder magazine to ignite and explode and destroying most of the fort. Today, as a New York state park, guests are led through the story of this once formidable fortress, from the earliest Native American inhabitants through Fort Saint-Frédéric, built by the French on this pivotal peninsula. From Crown Point, Continental troops entered the open waters of Lake Champlain, the first step on their ambitious invasion of Canada. British regulars, loyal Canadian subjects, and native forces stood in their way, defending the forts along the Richelieu River Valley in Quebec. For weeks, the forts at Saint-Jean and Fort Chambly held up the American advance, but they failed to stop the invasion. With interactive exhibits and exciting archaeological discoveries on display, guests to the imposing Fort Chambly National Historic Site are invited to imagine a past that is decidedly life-size. Amazingly, the Continentals won out, forcing the forts to surrender and even taking the city of Montreal by November, where the governor's home, the Château Ramezay, became the headquarters of the Continental Army in Canada. hosting an impressive collection of art and artifacts, and more than a few famous faces you might recognize, the Château Ramezay is a sliver of history located in the heart of the bustling metropolis of Montreal. The city dazzles the senses with its sights, sounds, attractions, and thrills that might make you want to take a little something home with you. But in 1775, the Americans' expedition wasn't nearly as pleasant. The advance into Canada was slowed by the walls of Quebec City, which withstood an American assault on New Year's Eve, turning the invasion into a stalemate. While bogged down in Canada, General Washington dispatched the able 25-year-old Henry Knox to scour the Champlain Valley for artillery needed to break the siege of Boston. While Knox himself got as far as Ticonderoga, he brought cannon back to Massachusetts from Ticonderoga and Crown Point, as well as some taken in the recent advance to Canada. He headed south, eventually cutting over the Berkshires to bring aid to Boston and into history. The American invasion of Canada faltered when British reinforcements arrived in the spring of 1776, and then retreated, losing the ground won in 1775. American forces fell back to Crown Point, where they determined to retreat further, all the way to Ticonderoga, where the shattered Continental Army prepared to rebuild itself. The sick were transferred to Fort George to recover, and the healthy prepared to dig in, transforming the old lines around Ticonderoga and leveling the forests on a promontory across Lake Champlain that they renamed Mount Independence in honor of the new nation that had declared itself that July. Starting with exhibits at their visitor center and extending through miles of hiking trails, Mount Independence State Historic Site in Vermont offers a journey across one of the richest Revolutionary War archaeological sites in the nation. The strategic position was once even connected to the Ticonderoga Peninsula by a bridge built by Continental soldiers, and formed a vital expansion of Ticonderoga's defensive position on Lake Champlain. The army there swelled in numbers, trained, and worked on miles of fortifications. They built an armed flotilla to patrol the lake and defend their positions. By the fall, nearly 13,000 American soldiers were camped at Ticonderoga and Mount Independence, waiting for the British. As the British advanced south in October, the American fleet delayed them off Valcour Island. The history of Benedict Arnold's heroic fleet that fought at Valcour Island can be explored at the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum, where underwater archaeology helps inform a deeper understanding of the fight for the lake. Through reconstructions, ship models, and original artifacts recovered from the lake bottom, the museum presents this critical moment in Lake Champlain's history, along with the science used to uncover it and the ongoing meaning and significance of the lake. But Crown Point was soon captured by British forces who prepared to push further south. Testing the American positions, the British realized the extent of the fortifications and reinforcements at Ticonderoga that had been prepared over that summer, and with the looming winter, decided to retreat to Canada. Victory in the North in 1776 saved the revolutionary cause. Troops were needed elsewhere, and only a small garrison was left to hold the North over the winter. Early in 1777, fewer reinforcements reached the Northern Department, while the British prepared for another invasion. Once again, the British seized Crown Point and Chimney Point on Lake Champlain in June and prepared to lay siege to Ticonderoga. Their army of British and German soldiers, Native American allies, Loyalists, and Canadians split up, advancing on both sides of Lake Champlain to encircle the American positions. Facing an envelopment by a determined enemy, and with limited manpower, the Continentals abandoned Ticonderoga and Mount Independence at the last minute. The British pursued the retreating Continentals, who turned and took a stand at Hubbardton, where they fought a fierce battle with the British advance guard. Although driven from the field, they had bought valuable time for the American retreat. Virtually untouched since the events of July 7, 1777, the pristine Hubbardton Battlefield State Historic Site offers an extraordinary glimpse into the dramatic moments where the Northern Army fought for its very survival. Flush with success, the British slowly advanced south that summer, eventually crossing the Hudson River, dangerously extending their supply lines back to Canada. To seize supplies, the British dispatched a largely German column to raid into Vermont. Marching eastward, This force was intercepted near the Wallamsack River in eastern New York on the road to Bennington, Vermont. Surrounded by American militiamen, they were pushed out of their defenses and annihilated during what became known as the Battle of Bennington in August, leaving the British still low on supplies and boosting American morale. The American victory there, and its heroes like Colonel Seth Warner and General John Stark, are immortalized in a towering monument that remains the tallest structure in the state of Vermont. The Bennington Battle Monument offers astounding views of the surrounding countryside and is a proud statement of how previous generations commemorated the deeds of their forebearers. Not to be outdone, the nearby Bennington Museum tells a rich story of the region. The Battle of Bennington and its legacy features prominently alongside a rich collection of fine and decorative art from generations who have taken inspiration from the area, famously including Grandma Moses, who achieved national notoriety after she began painting only late in life. Near Stillwater, New York, the Continental Army blocked the path of the British advance south. On September 19, 1777, the armies met at the Battle of Freeman's Farm. In hours of fierce fighting, the British held their positions, but were severely bloodied. American soldiers had shown their mettle, and the Continental forces swelled as the British licked their wounds and the two armies settled down to watch each other. The British pushed forward a reconnaissance in force on the morning of October 7th. American troops engaged the column, drove it back, and began an assault all along the British front. The shattered British forces fell back to their defenses, and even here, waves of Americans stormed through, capturing some of their positions. The Battle of Bemis Heights had left the British isolated, starving for supplies and demoralized, while the Continentals were flush with victory and growing stronger every day. Collectively, the two battles of Saratoga had taken a terrible toll on the British invaders, and they made the almost unthinkable decision to surrender to the Continental Army after an attempted retreat failed. The surrender of nearly 6,000 troops, an entire field army, reverberated across the U.S. and across the Atlantic. The Continental Army had gone toe-to-toe with the British and won. The victory at Saratoga bolstered the confidence of the United States and encouraged France to acknowledge the independence of the nation, a truly watershed moment in world history. This historic landscape is dotted with monuments commemorating the famous and infamous, and offers the ability to stand where the arc of history bent a little more than usual. And it all happened right here, along the now placid waterways and forested hills of Quebec, New York, and Vermont. Pivotal events of the Revolutionary War played out. Today, our nations, states, and tribes preserve this history along the Northern Department. Dozens of historic sites, battlefields, museums, and cultural centers explore the rich revolutionary history of the region. Throughout the Northern Department, you can follow the paths of British and American armies across breathtaking landscapes that became the pathways of war that determined the fate of a continent. The stories of the Revolution unfold today through dynamic exhibits and exciting programs, all set within stunning natural beauty. For young and old, the sites and museums of the Northern Department are brought to life, and together you can appreciate the full story of the region and its critical role in the Revolution. The Northern Department has long been known as the pivotal theater of the Revolutionary War. From humble sites of remembrance to staggering monuments, the memory of the Revolution pervades the region. Beyond battles, the Northern Department is a crossroads of peoples and cultures that are some of the most diverse and vibrant in North America. Explore the cultures that formed part of the revolutionary experience at museums and cultural centers across the Northern Department, where you can experience communities that still create, share, and inspire today. Traveling the Northern Department takes you across a beautiful world, from the rolling farm fields of Vermont to the mountains of New York, to the bustling towns and cities of Quebec. The region has it all. Past and present are side by side, where markets and restaurants, farms and events provide limitless ways to enrich a visit to the past with the excitement of today. The region is a leader in farm-to-table dining and drinking, and arts and crafts across the area are alive and well. It was here, in the Northern Department, that the American Revolution was fought and won. And it is here that you can experience the Revolution like nowhere else. This is a story that spans nations, an epic on a continental scale, a history 250 years in the making. Stories you can't miss at places that will take your breath away. Come, visit the Northern Department. Find your place in the past while you experience all the region has to offer today.